Hi guys. Are you currently manifesting a person? Probably, since you're in the manifesting community and watching all of these videos, you're probably manifesting a person. So, are you manifesting a person and you're feeling stuck, or you feel they're stuck, or you want them to show up in a certain way and you don't want them to show up unless they're the certain way? Well, let's talk about it in this video. Hi, my name is Babs. I am a manifesting coach. My website is manifestwithbabs.com, and that's also my email. That's also a free group on Facebook, Manifest with Babs, and also my TikTok. I'm on TikTok, and it's also Manifest with Babs. So let's get right into it. Are you manifesting an SP? Any person, right? SP stands for specific person. And do you have a bunch of stories that come up around them? Or do you feel like they're stuck? Or you don't want them to show up until they're healed, and you don't want them to show up until or unless they're showing up a certain way. I get that question a lot from my clients. Babs, how do I make them show up in a way that I want them to? For example, they're ready for the relationship, they're faithful, they want me and only me, right? Well, let's go back to everyone is you pushed out. Everyone is a version of us, right? And what they portray, what everyone around us and everything and everyone is us pushed out. Nature too, things are, but people portray our beliefs a lot because they say things to us or they do things and they make us feel certain ways. And that's how we find beliefs, is how we feel about what's happening around us. It's how I find beliefs. Like if something keeps happening over and over and over and I feel not good enough, then it's the belief I'm not good enough, right? Anyway, everyone is us pushed out. Everything is us pushed out. So what are the stories that you have around this person? What's going on? And I have a bunch of people that asked, Babs, I feel like my SP is stuck. What do I do? And then I said, hey, that's most likely because you feel stuck. Because when you get unstuck, they will become unstuck. When you're manifesting anything and any person, by the time they show up in your life and you deliberately manifested them, or sometimes undeliberately too, by the time they show up or any manifestation shows up, you have aligned with that manifestation. And it is what you're currently vibrating on, what energy level you're vibrating on. That's what you attract, because that's the law of attraction, is like attracts like. That's what the law of attraction states. So that's why I say, hey, if you're manifesting anything, go back to the 4 steps that I teach. There's a video, pretty detailed, and if you need more help, book a session with me. But the video is called Manifesting Steps, Manifest Anything You Want, something like that. It came out on October 20th, 2022. So find it, and I'll link it up here too. But everyone is you pushed out. So if you feel they're stuck, then you are stuck. If you have a story that comes up that they're not ready to be in a relationship with you, it's because you're not ready to be in a relationship, and you have to figure out why that story is in place for you. If the story comes up that they don't want you, that comes from not being ready, right? Usually. So you don't want them. Even though you want them, you also cannot want them. It is possible to have both in place. It is possible to want it and to not want it, because when we have so many fears in place, we tend to shut down, and then we don't want this to come in because we're so scared of what could or couldn't happen. But at the same time, we do want that, but then we don't want it. Our mind is very complex sometimes, so we're just trying to figure out what these stories are. That's why I said, go back to step 1, then step 2 and 3 and 4, do all of them in a row in the manifesting process and figure out where those stories are coming from. Because in step 3 is where you're evaluating what the doubts, fears, beliefs, stories are that are coming up that prevent you from having what you want, right? That is your mind telling you straight up what you want or don't want, or what's going on. Sometimes when the stories are in place that they don't want us, they're not ready, they don't love us, those are all fears that we're projecting into them. They're coming from us. Everyone is you pushed out, and this is so true. And it's sometimes very basic, to the point where I don't want that person because I'm scared. And that's why you have the person that they don't, you have the story that they don't want you. So sometimes what their stories are actually our stories that we have in place, and they're projecting onto them. Actually, it's not sometimes, it's most of the time. And sometimes we have other stories that we developed because of those fears that are in place. Then they develop more and more and more fears and other stories, right? So we want to chip away one story at a time. And when you start the manifesting process with the 4 steps, you usually have multiple stories come up in step 3. And after that, it gets less and less stories until you find that final story. And when you find that final story and you've detached enough and you've done enough resistance work, it can show up within 10 to 14 days. I have had people tell me, oh, my manifestation showed up in 3 days. I've had that too. But don't count on it. As long as you're counting on something, it's attachment most of the time, or resistance, or both. Attachment often comes from resistance. So do the 4 steps. That's all I can always say. Do the 4 steps, or book a session with me and we'll go through it. Do the core belief work, because that will help too. But everyone is you pushed out, and that really applies to manifesting a specific person too, because we have all these stories in place, and most of the time they're our stories. We don't want them. We're scared. We're not ready, etc., etc. And then they become their stories. Oh, they don't want us. They're hung up. They're not healed. I don't want them to show up until they're healed. That means you're not healed yet. You're not ready yet. That's why you have this story around them. So when your person shows up and you've done the work, deliberately or not deliberately, and your person or manifestation shows up, it is healed. It is where you are. It is where you wanted it to be, because a manifestation shows up 100% or more of what you wanted it to be. So when you first maybe undeliberately manifested that person, it was pretty much everything you wanted, but then it might have gone away because you are not in alignment with what that manifestation, the person, portrays, all those things. So that's why we have all these stories in place that we now have to work through in step 3, and all the detaching in step 2 and 4 that we want to do to align with that person, to align with that manifestation, right? Because like attracts like. That is the manifesting, that is the law of attraction. Like attracts like. So we're just doing the work to then manifest it into life. It's already been created. You can't even ruin a manifestation unless you don't want it. It will show up. As long as you do the work, it will show up. That's the rule. So again, I just want you to remember that their stories are probably your stories. So if they're scared, then you're scared. If they're not ready, you're not ready. If they don't want you, you don't want them, for whatever reasons. That's what we have to start finding that, right? And it's often, we're so fear driven. A lot of it comes from fears. All of these stories are usually fears and stories, and stories are fears, and beliefs started as fears at some point and became so old that they became beliefs. That's how it works. So you just want to chip away on these things 1 at a time, 2 at a time, 3 at a time, whatever comes up. You're working through these over and over, right? Right now, leave a comment below, and don't worry, it will not ruin your manifestation if you write it down or say it publicly. But I want you to write down why. So ask this out loud to yourself. Ask yourself, why does my person not want to be with me right now? Or ask, why are we not together? Say this out loud, and then the first thing that pops up in your mind, write it down below. You can delete it again, but write it out. I write everything out, and it doesn't ruin anything. It doesn't make everything come true. Our fears don't all come true just because we write them out. It actually helps to write them out or say them out loud, because that's often acceptance, right? So this helps. But leave a comment below. Why do you think your person doesn't want you right now, right? What's the first thing that comes up? Write it out. It doesn't hurt. And then go back to manifesting steps 1, 2, 3, 4 and follow those. And back to the part where people often ask me, hey, Babs, I want them to be healed when they come back. I want them to come back a certain way, and I don't want them to show up any other way. But with the manifesting process, that is usually a guarantee that they will show up the way you align. They will show up how you are. If you're healed, then you're ready, and you will let the manifestation in, and they're showing up healed. Every time I've manifested a guy back, they showed up in a better version of what they were when I first met them or first interacted with them. So by the time you align with them, they're usually exactly what you are at that moment and when you are ready to let them in. Because really everything that manifesting is we're ready to let it in. And you're hearing all my emails right now, but it happens. But it's all about you. The manifesting process is strictly about you. who you are, what you do, what you think, what you believe, that will push out. And that is what gets you in alignment, is aligning your consciousness with your subconscious. I was going to say self-conscious, but that's not what we want, right? The subconscious and the conscious align, and then you get your manifestation. So everything is about you and what you're working through. That is, everyone is you pushed out. Your beliefs, your stories, your fears, your doubts. Everyone will show you what's going on inside of you. Everyone and everything always shows you what you have inside of you. So instead of manifesting that they change, this is the most important part of this whole video. I hope you're watching still. Instead of sitting down and concentrating on them changing, I want you to change. And it starts with changing. This is where sometimes people get confused, because you're still kind of changing them, but they're your thoughts. So you have to realize, what do I think about them? What do I think about our situation? What do I think they think? This has been a request from multiple people, that I talk about everyone is you pushed out with what do I think and they think. So when I have a guy and I'm manifesting this person, I have to make sure that both our sides align. And since everyone is me pushed out, I, in my mind, control his thoughts in the sense that if I think that he loves me, if my story is, I think he loves me, then I have to make sure that my story about what he thinks about me is the same. So I have to make sure, hey, do I think that he thinks that he loves me, right? So we have to align those. That doesn't happen very often, that it's misaligned. Most of the time, it's just my story about him or that person. But sometimes it happens that it misaligns, where I think the one way and I think that he thinks the other way. Again, the example would be, oh my God, I think that he loves me. I think I'm the love of his life. Do I think, or what do I think he thinks? You can ask yourself these questions. Do I think he loves me? Then see what comes up, yes or no. That's how we always communicate with ourselves, right? Or you could ask, what do I think he thinks about me? And then your subconscious will respond. Your subconscious will always respond, or higher self, both of them. They will always respond. Ask a question, ask a specific question for a specific subject, and you will always get an answer within 24 hours. Usually it's way faster than that. But if you're doing the deliberate work, sit down. What do I think he thinks about me? Do I think he loves me? Yes, no, whatever the answer is, right? So you want to align it. If the answer is no, and you think that he doesn't love you, then you go, okay, I accept that I don't think he thinks he loves me. I don't think he thinks he loves me. I don't think he feels that he loves me. So we're addressing his or their side. And then you accept it, and then whatever feelings come up, you accept those, and then, or accept that you're not okay with the feelings. And then you go, I think he thinks he loves me. I think he feels that he loves me. Then you turn the story around, right? And then the same with you. If you don't think he loves you, this is your thinking. First we did, or it doesn't matter which one you do first. You do their side, you address what you think they think, and then you address what you think about them. I don't think that he loves me. Oops, that's a story. That's a fear. I accept that I don't think he loves me. Oh, I accept all the emotions that come up, right? And then accept it, or accept that you're not okay with them, whatever the situation is. And I have a whole process about acceptance, right? And then you go turn that story around. He loves me. What if he does love me? I do think he loves me. He could love me. What if he does love me? I often, when the fear is really strong, I'm like, fuck, I don't think they love me. Then I start with, what if he does love me? And that automatically eventually turns into, oh, of course he loves me. And stories turn around really quickly. Stories turn around within 4 to 7 days, sometimes 10 days, but you have to first accept what is in place right now. So if you don't believe that they love you, you have to accept that, properly accept it. And then you turn the story around, because stories sometimes don't turn around for years until you actually accept the current story that's in place. I have had that happen. Same with beliefs. You have to accept the current belief that is in place before you then turn around and create a new belief. So when you're doing core belief work, you first have to accept that I don't think I'm good enough. I accept that I don't feel good enough. And then you turn it around. Because otherwise these things never kick in, because we always have to accept first. And that is actually basic psychology. Any psychologist and psychiatrist will tell you have to accept things. And that actually makes you feel better too. And that's actually part of step 3, finding all the resistance, is a lot of it is acceptance. And that then helps turn things around. So everyone, again, is you pushed out. And it's so important to address that you are going through this. You're doing the healing, not them. They will heal with you, because if everyone is you pushed out, then you have to do the work for yourself, right? And they then will push it out or reflect it back at you. That is how it works. This is how it works. The first universal law is the law of oneness, that we're all connected and we're all one. That is what everyone is you pushed out means. We're all connected. So if we're all connected and everyone is a reflection of me, I have to start with my inner work, and they will only be able to push it out, because that's all the 3D world does to us. Nothing else. The 3D is only a projection of the inner work we do, the inner us. Whatever is inside of us will push out at all times. Everything you experience in the 3D world on an everyday basis is either a manifestation, or I call it old energy, because we're always manifesting things deliberately and non-deliberately. Therefore, everything is always either old energy that is pushing out that you don't like, or it's already a manifestation that you did want and it came in. That's it. Everything in our 3D is only a pushed out version of what is already inside. If you don't have it inside of you, it cannot push out. If you don't believe you're good enough, then you're going to get more events on the outside that will push out that you're not good enough than events that will push out that you do feel good enough. But again, with every belief, you get both pushed out, but one is more than the other. So if the belief is positive, it'll push out positive more often than negative. But it can still push out once in a while negative, but you will feel better once you've addressed the belief. But back to the SP version. So when we manifest anything, and especially an SP, and you want them to come back healed, and you want them to come back in a certain way, this is work that you have to do, not them. So don't get hung up. I'm like, oh, they're healed, they're ready, they love me. Yes, you have to do that, but it's not the main thing. The main thing is, if you want them to heal, it's that you have to heal. If you want them to show up in a certain way, that's you telling yourself, your subconscious, your higher self is saying, hey, you got to do this work. They're just pushing it out. That's their job. Everything in our 3D, its job is, and their job is, to reflect back at us what we have in place. They cannot do anything else. This is why when you're in a relationship with anyone, a loved, intimate relationship, or friends and family, I'm sure you've experienced this, that when you have a serious conversation, and you have a one-on-one with them, and they say, yes, I will change, I will do this for you, and they don't end up changing, it's not them, it's because you haven't changed. You've heard the saying, we are the change, you are the change, right? That is so true, because everyone is us pushed out, and they can only ever push out what we have inside. So if they're not changing, it's because we're not changing. If they're not healed, we're not healed. If they're not ready, we're not ready. If they don't want us, we don't want them, for whatever fears that are in place, right? This is the truth. This is how everyone is you pushed out works. They can only reflect us. Everything in our 3D is a delayed projection of what we did on the inside. That is why it's so important to actually work on yourself and change the fears, change the doubts, change those stories, change those beliefs that come up in step 3. Again, if you need any help, I do coach sessions. My website is manifestwithbabs.com. You can book sessions there. It'll show up in your own timeline. And other than that, leave comments below on what you're working on. I would love to hear that. Do it right now. Or what you're afraid of. Don't worry. If you're afraid that when you write it out, it'll manifest, accept that fear, because it's in place. Anytime there's a fear and you don't want to think about it, accept it. Everything you don't want to think about, accept it, because that's why we don't want to think about it, right? We haven't accepted it. Anyway, I hope this helped. Have a great day. Bye.